Dear colleagues, we're on day 155 of Ukraine's resistance. My name is Natalia Staropravo. We're continuing our series of briefings at Mediacentru Ukraine. With us is Sergei Kuyun, director of the A95 consulting group. Sergei, could you tell? I would like to start by asking about the fuel. How do you see the situation on the fuel market? Well, we have a reasonably decent picture today. This morning I was going to work and I saw that almost all the gas stations were selling the full spectrum of oils and fuels. So we're noticing that we're noticing that the supply chain is continuing. The situation is becoming normalized quite quickly, and even until recently, we could say that gas was the biggest problem, petrol was the biggest problem. But right now, we're seeing that the situation has drastically improved, and I would like to hope that this will continue. This trend will continue. As far as diesel fuel and gas, the situation is in a different dimension now because unlike petrol, which we had some shortages. With diesel, we see these very uh, massive events in the market. There's a lot of product. The market is quite saturated. Everybody's trying to sell. This pushes the prices down. We see that after the shock in the past week, due to the jump in the dollar exchange rate, we see the situation has stabilized a little bit, and whereas initially the prices jumped up, they're rolling back down now. And of course, I don't think they'll come back to their previous levels, but the situation seems to be calming down. And in any case, every day the prices for diesel fuel are coming down. We also see that in August, some companies uh, have already started requesting less fuel from their suppliers abroad, which means that the market is quite full, that we have reasonably good stocks, which is very encouraging, particularly considering that we're essentially start entering the period of very active consumption, harvest and harvest campaign, everything. So we will need these stocks. As far as gas is concerned, we see that even in the station, there's a lot of competition. The prices are coming down very noticeably, and we see that in Kyiv it's now less than 28 hryvnia per liter. Again, a month ago it was like 38 to 40 hryvnia per liter at the gas station. So it's about 30% down in a month. So the main job of the market was to provide fuel to the consumer, which the consumer now has, and I hope that we have found the paths that will let us control the situation further. We have a question from the room. Can we hear it? Andriy Shevchenko, Mediacentru Ukraine. In recent days, we perhaps the biggest deal in the energy sector was the decision by the government to basically the default of Naftogaz. The government has basically blocked the Naftogaz credit accounts, which has put the Naftogaz company in the on the verge of default. What do you think this news will mean to the energy market? What will it mean in practice? What will the practical implications be? Frankly, the question is not really to me. It's not really properly addressed to me. It's not my expertise. I don't think it's a question of any kind of. It's not a commercial question. It's not a production question. As I see it, and as my colleagues see it, it's more a question of. It's a broader question. It's a question of financial stability and the future of the financial system of Ukraine as such. And the problem is not the condition of the Naftogaz and its work, but rather it's some disconnect between Naftogaz and its only stockholder, which is the cabinet of ministers. How did this misunderstanding happen between these two big players? I don't know. I- It seems like we're all adults in the room, but very people who to be taken seriously. It's not clear to me how this happened, so I wouldn't like to make any kind of draw any kind of conclusions yet. And I don't see this as a particularly worrying sign. The company is working; they have the money. The fact that they haven't been allowed to return this money is a different question. So I think I'll limit myself to this. Uh, we've heard forecasts of perhaps the worst winter in history and a prolonged economic crisis. What is your prognosis, your forecast about the life of the ordinary Ukrainian? What are we to expect? Again, I have to note that I'm a professional I'm a very narrow specialist, which is petroleum products. It's nothing to do with gas or coal or electrical power. So I hope that our branch, which is the supply of petroleum products, I would like to say that we've had our first achievement on the energy front, specifically in the petroleum products. Yeah, we're living day by day. When everything was bad, everybody was talking about it. Once everything's fine again, everyone's forgotten. But really, what happened? This is the first great energy victory for us because the enemy had destroyed in the first month of Russia's aggression, the enemy has destroyed almost 100% of our infrastructure, oil bases, plants, transport junctions, etc. So we lost 100% of our pre-war supply sources. And over these 2 or 3 months, we have built a new market practically from scratch. They're completely independent from Russia or Belarus or etc. No one in the world has done this. Ukraine has been the first country in Europe to completely give up Russian oil and petroleum products. So, in my opinion, it's extremely important, and symbolically too. Not to mention that Ukrainians are moving this market, this world market, uh, sort of almost put it in reverse, have basically made Europe reject Russian energy supplies, not just oil but also gas. 6 months ago, it was hard to even imagine. It wasn't even. I mean, it wasn't even. It was barely something that we could even talk about. Although Ukrainians had warned, we had warned Europeans many times over that Russia uses energy supplies as weapons. It's not business; it's a weapon. But we weren't believed. Particularly the Germans are now putting ashes on their heads, saying, "Yeah, yes, we didn't understand this. We didn't want to understand this. We didn't want to see this." But we've done a great thing, and I don't think myself I would have believed that we can simply switch to completely different sources of supply sources, and that's great. And also another thing we see is that in June we had about 300 importers of diesel fuel. Prior to the war, we had 100. So you understand the level of activization. Like the market, we haven't just filled the market, we also changed the structure. We have so many stakeholders. Each of them is doing something, bringing something, and again, this strengthens the system overall and makes it more resilient. But I still do think that, of course, it's too early to calm down. It's no time for complacency, because of course the market has taken the easiest path. We started buying all the fuel that the neighboring countries have had, which was Poland, from neighboring countries like Poland, Romania, a little bit of Slovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria. But we see that right now, at the peak of the consumption season, we can't fully meet the petrol needs, because those markets don't have the resources, which means that we have to move on. We have to come up with new logistical routes that would allow us to make this supply system more diversified and more resilient. Moreover, we are facing again the seasonal upshot in consumption, and it shoots up not only in Ukraine, also in Poland, in Romania, Bulgaria, and so we have to understand that these countries will be primarily interested in supplying their own markets, their own consumers, or their own voters. So if the question is, do we send fuel to export, or do we give to Ukraine? Of course, this fuel will go into the internal market, and this creates the risk that we might have a seasonal shortage. Secondly, we have the harvest campaign, right? We will be taking it out. This will again put pressure on the transport infrastructure, and we have to understand that there aren't grain rails and oil rails. It's the same route. And of course, the structure will be overloaded, and it will be harder to supply fuels, again, which creates the risk that basically just reinforces it for me that we need new supply chains, new supply routes. And three, there's a war. No one can guarantee that, oh, okay, the war is over, no more missiles, no more attacks on our fuel infrastructure. So, of course, it's no time for complacency. We have to keep working on creating new corridors, and both the government has to be involved, because these projects, of course, are most effectively resolved at the intergovernmental level. Uh, Thank you. But we would like to also hear a bit more about the forecasts on the fuel market, the Ukrainian market. Are there alternatives, and what would you say about cooperation with international partners? Well, like I said, it's we've worked reasonably well with our neighbors, Romania primarily, and Poland. Although, again, as far as future prospects, I think that the Poland direction is under 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 is under capacity yet. The numbers suggest that both the numbers and the traders say that Poland can do more, and not just Poland, but also, for instance, Orlen company, or this semi state-owned company. They have a plant in Lithuania. So when we have a shortage of fuel, for instance, the Lithuanian plant has free free capacities, or free amounts of fuels. They're more than even our annual consumption potentially. So it's only a question of bringing the product here. But we see that so far there aren't the routes to do this quickly. So this is homework for us. Additionally, there's very serious potential about bringing in uh, fuel from Poland. Of course, we'd like to see it happen more quickly, but so far they don't have those tempos. Their life is a bit slower in our neighboring countries. Then Germany is another interesting direction, because Germany produces a lot of products, and also an important transit country. For instance, there's a lot of fuel coming through Germany from Western Europe, like from countries like Belgium or the Netherlands. But the problem is that it's really far, so it's very difficult logistically. It needs water transport, and then needs to be loaded on trains, and this is this very difficult route. Uh, Again, all of this needs intergovernmental contacts and work on businesses, and it's the diversified system of supplying fuel to Ukraine. I'm sure that we can do this. The important thing is that we put it to our partners and make them understand, make it clear to them that in the oil in the area of oil, we're not asking for help. We're offering partnership. Ukraine is a massive market that is integrating into the European market and is bringing a lot of benefits. Um, This is both in terms of port capacity, transport infrastructure. So this is jobs and businesses for them. So I I think the Europeans have to need a little more time to understand this. They do not make decisions as quickly as we do. They don't have the same they're not facing the same sort of critical situation as we are. So I really hope that in time we'll be able to make these supplies, diversify these supplies, and make them more effective. And another reason we need this, not only in terms of reliability, but also in terms of prices, because when we have more sources, more supply sources, we will be talking to it'll be a different quality of dialogue with our current suppliers, who are, if we are being frank, they often twist our arms in terms of prices. They understand we have nowhere else to go, and so it from a purely business standpoint, they set us high prices. Once we have more sources of supply, we'll have the opportunity to negotiate from a more beneficial standpoint as a buyer. Uh, Thank you very much. Just as a very last question, we would like to hear your prognosis about the fall. What should Ukrainians expect in terms of fuel in the fall, do you think? As far as let's divide this in two, right? As far as the resources, I've already said, so we have a reasonably decent situation. The market has built a new system, a new supply system. It is functional. So we're able to provide fuel for us. Um, so this is a great victory both for the market and the government. Thank you very much, sir. With us was Sergei Kuyun, the director of A95 Consulting Group. This concludes our briefings for today. Please watch our announcements on the resources of Mediacentru Ukraine and stick together because we are one day closer to victory.